Hey y'all, today we're going to do a fun little twist on some classic Halloween treats. So the first thing we're going to make is s'mores popcorn balls. Now, of course, the traditional recipe would be plain popcorn balls. So we're going to make these s'mores just to put a little modern twist on them. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is pop some popcorn. Now, if you end up with kernels in your bowl, just make sure that you get those out. Same thing, you could use microwave popcorn for this if you wanted to, but just make sure that you get like the plain popcorn and make sure that you don't have any kernels in there because nobody wants to break a tooth on a popcorn ball. So what you're going to need is 10 cups of popcorn. Now, after we get our popcorn popped, we're going to melt down a quarter of a cup of butter. And then add in 1 full bag of mini marshmallows. Because, you know, we got to have the marshmallow part of our s'more, right? So go ahead and mix that around until all of your marshmallows are good and melted. Okay, just stir it constantly, just like if you were making Rice Krispie treats or something. Once you get it all melted, take it off the heat, and then you're going to add in about about a teaspoon of vanilla. Stir that up real good, and then we're going to add in our popcorn right in here. So it'd be just like if you were making a Rice Krispie treat, except we're going to be using the popcorn and the other ingredients that we have. Does that make sense? So I measured out 10 cups of popcorn, and it's not salted. I didn't salt it or anything like that. I mean, I guess you could if you wanted to, but I didn't. So just plain old popcorn. Then you're going to add in 2 cups of Golden Graham cereal. Of course, I have the Great Value brand because it really doesn't matter. It's all the same thing pretty much. So just dump 2 cups of that in there. And then you're going to mix that up. Work pretty quick so you get all your marshmallow mixed in before it starts to, dry up. Or not dry up, but like set, I guess. So just mix it up real good, and then you're going to take and dump that right onto a cookie sheet lined with some parchment paper. And that way we can get it to cool off just a little bit so that we're not burning ourselves when we're trying to put these popcorn balls together. Now, y'all know that Dutch oven weighs 1 billion pounds. You can see I'm kind of white knuckling it. I had to sit it down for a second and regroup. Had to get a hold of myself because ooh, that thing was heavy. I was about to get the carpal tunnel. But anyway, just put that on your cookie sheet and let it cool down a little bit. So then what I did was I got another little piece of parchment paper because this is where I'm going to put our little popcorn balls. Now, of course, you can't have s'mores without chocolate, right? So what you're going to do is take about a cup of mini chocolate chips, and the original recipe that I found actually said roll your balls and then press the chocolate chips into them. But, I feel like I know more than everybody. Not really. But on this day I was like, well, I'll just sprinkle some in. And you can see I sprayed my hands with some cooking spray. Normally when I do like Rice Krispie treats, I'll butter up my hands, like rub some butter on them. But I had the cooking spray out, so that's what I used. So as you can see, my little chocolate chips are in there, but the problem with this method is that as I went along, the little bit of remaining heat that was in the marshmallows and then the heat from my hands, I started to kind of melt the chocolate just a little bit. So the first few were beautiful, but the last couple, they were still great. They tasted fantastic and they were fine, but they did have a little bit of melted chocolate on them. And of course, I made a big old mess on myself because I had just chocolate all over my hands and looked like I was a little kid that'd been out playing in the mud hole. We used to spend summers at my grandma's house and she would give us old bowls and spoons to go make mud pies. That's what I felt like. Look, my hands, y'all. They're terrible. They was covered in chocolate. But anyway, that is all there is to these easy s'mores popcorn balls. And they are delicious, y'all. They are fantastic. You got to make these. Okay. Next thing that we're going to make is candy corn Rice Krispie treats. Now, of course, the classic part of this is candy corn, right? And what we're going to do is make our candy corn into Rice Krispie treats that look like candy corn. You know what I'm saying. You saw the picture. You know what I'm saying, but I'm going to show you how to do it. Now, it does take a couple of steps, but it's super, super easy. So first, you're going to line your little cake pan with some parchment paper because we want to be able to pull these out, later on without them sticking to the pan. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do is spray your bowl that your cereal is going into, okay? And that way, when we add the marshmallow stuff to it, it doesn't all stick to your bowl. So for the first layer, this is the yellow layer, we're going to need 2 1/4 cups of Rice Krispies. And then in another bowl, we're going to add in 2 1/3 cup of mini marshmallows. And don't worry if I don't say something. All of this is going to be down in the description box, all the measurements. So then you're going to add in 2 tablespoons of butter, and we're going to put that in the microwave for 1 minute. Okay, you see it's all fluffed up and everything. Go ahead and take that out of the microwave and stir it up real good. Now, as you can see, I still had a little bit of butter that wasn't melted. But if you do that, don't worry, the marshmallow's hot enough. Just keep stirring it and your butter will melt on down. I just didn't want to put it back in there and risk kind of burning my marshmallow. So then I decide that I'm going to pour this right over in here. And guess who forgot the food coloring? Yep, me. Watch, I'm going to catch myself. Whoop, look at there. Just in time. Just in the nick of time, y'all. So our first layer, like I said, is yellow. So what we're going to do, I have food coloring gel. So I just went ahead and put, I don't know, let me see, 1, 2, 3-ish drops in there. Just use ever how much you need until you get the color that you want it to be. And I thought this turned out the perfect shade of yellow. So then you're going to dump that into your Rice Krispies, and then we're going to mix that up until all of the Rice Krispies are coated in the yellow marshmallow. Now, I started mixing with the spoon, and it does take a little bit because they are kind of slipping around because your bowl is like greased, but don't worry about that. You need it to, you need that so they don't just stick to everything. So then what I decided to do was spray my hand a little bit, and at the very end, now I wouldn't do this from the beginning, but at the very end, I went ahead and just kind of mashed it around a little bit just to make sure that all of the marshmallow was covering the Rice Krispies. So then what you're going to need to do is spray your hands up again, and like I said, you can use butter or whatever for this, but I had the cooking spray out, so that was just the easiest thing for me to do. So what you're going to do is kind of get it in a little bit of a snake shape and just press it into your pan all the way around the edges and just fool with it, spread it out a little here, there, and all that until you get a solid ring. And then make sure that you press this down into your pan really, really good. Okay, now we're going to set that over to the side. So for the next ring, this is going to be our orange ring. You're going to need 1 1/4 cups of Rice Krispies. And we're going to set that to the side just like the first time. Now, I didn't wash my bowl because I'm doing orange and I'm mixing red and yellow. I didn't feel the need to wash the bowl in between. Okay, so for this one, we need 1 1/3 cups of mini marshmallows and 1 tablespoon of butter. And that's going to go in for 45 seconds because we got a little bit less of everything. So then I added a couple of drops of yellow and a couple of drops of red. Now, if you have orange, that would be great, but I didn't, so I had to kind of make my own orange. And I did add a little bit too much red, but the good thing about this is it's pretty forgiving if you've ever had to like mix colors like this. So what I did is I was like, okay, this is not the color orange I want, so I went back and I added a little bit more yellow. So like I said, if you're mixing it with red and yellow, just keep going until you get the color you want. Then you're going to do the same thing. Dump that into your bowl, mix it up, and then the last few little things, I just mix it around with my hand to make sure everything was good and coated. So now we're going to bring our pan back over, and now we're going to make the second ring. So what you're going to do is basically what you did the first time, except you're going to put it inside of the yellow ring. Now you want to make sure that you leave enough space for the white ring in this. So just kind of, I'm sorry I went out of frame just a little bit, but see how I'm doing? Just press it down. And don't worry too much about what it looks like from this side because what you're looking at from the top is actually the bottom. You'll see what I'm saying in a minute. Okay, so for the last one, we need 3/4 cup of Rice Krispies. And then we're going to need 1 1/4 cups of the mini marshmallows. Now, I did change bowls at this point because these need to be white and I didn't want them to be, orange or red or yellow or anything. So then you're going to put in 1/2 tablespoon of butter, pop that in the microwave for about 30 seconds. And then same thing, we're going to go ahead and we're going to just mix this up. Now, I've seen some of these, some recipes that make the candy corn rings, and they actually take the end, like this end, what's going to be the tip of, you'll see in a minute. But instead of just leaving it like this, they actually dip it in white chocolate. But I kind of didn't really feel the need to do that. I think they turned out just fine, just like this. Now, they're not stark white, of course, but it's good enough. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't matter. So last thing, we're going to go ahead, like the same thing we did with the other two. We're going to mix this up real good. Mix it around with your hand to make sure everything's good and coated. We're going to bring our rings back over, and then we're going to put this right in the center. And all I did was just take the big old glob of it, put it in the middle, and just press it down. Because like I said, this is going to be the bottom. So we don't need to worry about this looking perfect. So just press it in there. You just want to make sure that you've got it pressed in there tight enough that it's all going to hold together and your rings are not going to fall apart when you cut them. Does that make sense? So once you get this part done, you're going to want to let this sit for at least an hour maybe, until everything is completely cooled down. Okay? So once, see there, it's not perfect from the bottom, but I'm going to show you when we flip it. Okay, after about an hour, I went ahead and pulled it out of my pan, and that's why we use the parchment paper, so it all comes out in one piece. Now, I'm putting a little paper towel under there because I did grease that parchment paper, and I didn't want the grease all over my counter, so I just kind of wiped up the bottom. So you're just going to peel your paper away just real carefully, and then we're going to flip this over. So now you're going to see the pretty part. Now, see how that is nice and even? So don't worry about what the top that you're looking at looks like when you're in the process of making it, because we're going to flip it, and the bottom part is the part that's going to be pretty. So then I just took a big old knife and I just cut these into triangles. And y'all, are these not so adorable? And of course they taste good, because who doesn't love a good Rice Krispie treat? But look how cute these are. This is a very cute twist, I think, on a classic. A classic Rice Krispie treat or a classic candy corn. You got both right here in one. All right, so last but certainly not least, we are going to make caramel apple grapes. Now, the first thing you're going to want to do is, of course, get you some grapes. Now, this time of the year, the grapes are not the best. So I didn't get the cute little fat round grapes because we didn't have any. I had to get these long skinny grapes, but you know what? I had to work with what I had. You're going to want to make sure your grapes are very, very dry, because otherwise your caramel sauce is not going to stick. Then you're going to take a toothpick and stick it into the pretty end, because the ugly end of your grape, we want that covered in caramel, and we don't want nobody to see that, okay? So this recipe is my twist on, obviously, candy apples. Now, I love candy apples. The problem with candy apples is they're so big, they're hard to eat. They're hard to eat, and sometimes the caramel is so hard you can't even bite through it. So this is what I decided to do. So what I did was I took some of these caramel bits, and I halved this recipe because what it calls for is 50 grapes, and I wasn't making 50 grapes. So I'm going to put the original recipe down in I'm going to put what I did down in the description box, but just know that this is half of the recipe. So you need 1/2 cup of those caramel bits and 1 tablespoon of heavy cream. Now, if you don't have heavy cream, I'm sure milk would be just fine. All right, so what we need now is some stuff to coat our candy apples, right? So you can use like crushed nuts, like peanuts or cashews, pecans. You can use whatever you want. What I decided to use, because it's what I had on hand, was some graham crackers. So what I did was I just took my little graham crackers and I crushed them up pretty fine, but don't worry if they have a little bit of like little chunks in them, because it's not going to matter. So then I found this granola I had. I'd forgotten I had this, or I didn't forget I had it, but I wasn't thinking about using it for this. So I took out, it's a kind of a vanilla granola. So I took some of the big clusters out and I just broke them up, with a with a little masher there, with a meat masher. What is that thing called? I can't think of what it's called, but anyway, y'all let me know down in the comments. Okay, so now this is what I'm going to use to dip our candy apples in. So all I did was I took the caramel bits and the cream, and I put it on the stove, and I just let it heat up till it was melted. It doesn't take but just a minute. So what I decided to do was dump it into a bowl, because I figured maybe partway through this was going to start to harden up. And if I had it in a bowl, I could just pop it back in the microwave to loosen it up rather than trying to put it back on the stove. And I did have to do that partway through doing this. So just know that, that you may have to reheat your caramel at some point. So then I just went ahead and dipped my grapes down in my caramel, and then I rolled them around in the little toppings I made, and then I just stuck them on a little plate. Now you can see my poor little grapes, y'all. They were so long and skinny that I was struggling trying to get them to stand up. But I did some in the graham cracker, some in the granola, and then some I just did plain. So good, y'all. This is what they look like when they come out. Don't they look like tiny little caramel apples? Well, maybe not mine because they're so tall and skinny, but if you had little short fat grapes, they would definitely look like little candy apples. But these are perfect for people, appetizers, just for people to grab. And then let's not forget about those yummy s'mores popcorn balls. These are so good, y'all. So, so good. They taste just like if you were going to eat a s'more, but easier, just way easier. And everybody loved them. And then last, but certainly not least, is our little candy corn Rice Krispies. Y'all, these recipes turned out so cute, and I loved the little twist on the classics that I came up with. So I hope that you love them as much as I do, and that you make some of these. But that's all I got for y'all today. I'll catch y'all on the next one. Bye, y'all.